is data that proves a connection between COVID shots and excess deaths being suppressed by the British government, even though that information has already been given to big pharma companies. They wouldn't do that, would they? Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining us on our voyage to truth and freedom, and what a voyage it is with so many obstacles in the way. That's why it's vital that you click the link in the description and join us for an extra video a week where we talk about even more explicit and difficult subjects. I mean, subjects that would get us censored and in trouble for dissenting against establishment preferred narratives. And we have conversations with what I call these days proper people who care about things that matter rather than ignoring and distracting you from things that are absolutely vital. For today's story, we have the perfect example. It seems like data may already exist that demonstrates that there is, in fact, a connection between excess deaths, which in our country they've just changed the way of measuring. Guess what? It makes it less excess deaths. That's surprising, isn't it? And the treatments that were available, indeed quite heavily advocated for during the pandemic period. Now, this information exists. It's already with pharmaceutical companies, but they're saying, astonishingly, we can't reveal that data because of people's anonymity or whatever excuse. They're coming up with some reason why they can give it to Moderna, with whom they have some interesting deals. They can give it to Pfizer, with whom they have some interesting deals, but they can't give it to you. I mean, you only fund everything. You only fund the government. You only funded these vaccines. You are the people that are suffering as a result, if indeed there is a connection, and I'm certainly not saying it's concrete yet that there is, but you are not allowed the information. Note how similar this is to the advocation for ongoing censorship. What position does it put you in? The position of a child or an idiot. We have to censor this information. We have to keep back this information to what? Protect you, to protect your children, to protect your elderly, when there's been a COVID inquiry in this country that fell somewhat short of a rigorous investigation to what went on. Oh, my phone, it's on factory settings. That's very interesting. I wonder if Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson or any of the people that appeared before that rather tepid inquiry had information that perhaps connected COVID medications and excess deaths. That's the silver bullet. That's why people are getting shut down for dissent. That's why Moderna are spying on people. That's why government-funded departments are spying on people. And that's why we're going to talk about this story now, particularly given that they're advocating that all of us take yearly mRNA shots now, that it replaces the flu shot. Let's have a look at how the legacy media are reporting around these issues and plainly demonstrating that they don't have your interests at heart. They, in fact, work for the very same interests that keep this information for you. We should be demanding this information.
Yeah, well, the Food and Drug Administration today proposing to make COVID shots a lot more like the annual flu shot, simplifying the process.
Yeah, simplifying it so they can do it every year, so they can charge you for it continually, like the pharmaceutical industry requires you to be on drugs for as long as possible. They want wars that last forever and drugs that work as long as you take them every day for the rest of your life. Can you believe that the pharmaceutical industry has not been exposed to a reckoning after the opioid crisis? Like Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family are still in some kind of version of business after 500,000 people have died as a result of their product when they concealed information prior to the release of those drugs, when they concealed information and mitigated it through the entire investigative process. That shows you how the system worked. The pandemic wasn't particularly unique. It was just big. And in its vastness, it showed us how these institutions and systems operate. That's the challenges they're dealing with now. Too many people have been exposed to the truth. And too many people, oddly, are also being exposed to myocarditis.
To one shot a year. The FDA will decide on Thursday whether to go forward with the idea.
So wait, should we go forward on this new idea that means that every year we'll earn this money? Well, let's just talk through how you make your money again. You know, these companies, they give you your money. What, so if we keep them happy, keep going, then they'll keep us happy. That's right. And if we said, no, we're not doing this, there's no need. In fact, there are reasons to be very concerned. In fact, there's data that's being suppressed right now that might reveal that it was evilly that is exactly the line we don't want you going down. Oh, I get it. So I just approved the drug. You just approved the drug.
And at the same time, researchers are working on a new flu shot that will be a lot more like a COVID shot.
Even the fellow off the news is confused. It'll be a lot more like a COVID shot, which means that it might... No, that can't be right. Nope. It is going to be more like the COVID shot, but no. Hey, don't shoot the messenger. And please don't mandate those medications for the messenger either. Yikes.
Ursula Perry with how new technology is working its way into old vaccine protections.
The COVID pandemic required scientists to move fast.
Certainly did. Lightning speed. They're not working so fast at releasing the data, let me tell you. Right, okay. Vaccines for sale. Vaccines for sale. Get your vaccines. AstraZeneca, Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson. Don't talk about that one much anymore, do they? Get your vaccines. Hey, these vaccines, I'm worried if there's a connection. Oh, well, we'll just have to do some research on that. So they can work at a variety of speeds.
Bringing vaccine technology that had been studied for years but not approved front and center.
Studied for years, but not approved. I've been studying this for years and I just can't approve it. And why is that?
And I think that when the world had an urgent need for vaccines, when SARS-CoV-2 virus hit that causes COVID, then it became an opportunity to test this new approach to vaccine development.
It certainly did. Business is booming, baby.
Traditional vaccines put a weakened germ into our bodies, but mRNA shots like the Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 vaccines teach cells to make a protein.
It teaches cells like it's Sesame Street level. Once again, the infantilization of the audience.
What is a vaccine? And does it have to be a shot? And will I still need to wear my mask?
I think above all else, they want us in these states of fear and desire, like a child, banalized, confused and baffled, not like sort of astute, empowered individuals that demand freedom, demand control. Don't hand that over to authoritarian institutions because they're planning to protect you under the aesthetic of liberalism, but with the credos of authoritarianism.
That triggers an immune response if someone gets infected. Researchers take that mRNA template and can encode it for the flu or other infectious diseases.
Yeah, there seems to be some downside, though. We can just encode it for anything. Can you encode it to stop causing myocarditis? That is the one thing we can't do.
It would also make it easier to tweak during flu season.
Tweak.
The mRNA vaccine for the flu is currently being studied, and we could have the results as soon as March.
Hooray!
Meantime, other studies are underway on other vaccines for other diseases, including Lyme disease, rabies, HIV, and even Zika.
It seems like they've got the technology now and they're trying to apply it in as many markets as possible in order to make money rather than what's supposed to be the stated goal of the health industry, making people healthy. In Australia, where during the pandemic, authoritarian measures were piloted in a way that seemed very, very surprising at the time, the pendulum is swinging back the other way. And they're having to sort of admit that they shouldn't have mandated vaccines, that their lockdown measures were ineffective, and various other admissions and concessions have subsequently been made. Indeed, we are entering into the pandemic reckoning period, but I suppose the media are collaborating, ensuring it doesn't seem like a reckoning. They're trying to make it seem sort of normal and inoffensive.
There's been a bombshell ruling in favour of Queensland's frontline workers who took their bosses to court fighting against COVID-19 vaccine mandates.
The decision means directives ordering police and paramedics to get the jab were unlawful and had no power.
They were just telling us what to do with no right at all. Take these vaccines, I tell you, take them. They can't do that. That's not the law of a country. They tried to change what the relationship was. In fact, many people think that was kind of the point of the pandemic period, was to alter the dynamic between the governed and the governing to one of authoritarianism and just obedience. And through their propaganda and campaigning, they achieved that to a large degree. Because if you can get people on side, if you can get people going, you're irresponsible, you're not wearing a mask, you killed my granddad. If you can get people out of their minds with fear, which is understandable given the conditions, then suddenly people are willing to accept authority. That is why we have to demand free speech. And that's why you have to sort of remain a little bit calmer.
They sobbed and cheered inside court and even louder out.
We can't keep bringing you this groundbreaking, revolutionary, heartwarming content without your love, dedication and devotion and without the support of our sponsors. Can you believe that January is almost over? How's them New Year's resolutions going? Oh, I can't bother with all that. It's difficult. Mine was easy. Of course, as always, it's to focus on well-being and overthrowing the establishment. Now, we all know the foundation of well-being is a good night's sleep, and throwing over the establishment means a willingness to absorb a lot of flack. So if I could just do one thing to improve my sleep and overall well-being, it is taking the number one mineral for that. Do you know what it is? It also helps me personally on so many levels I can't even describe it. Do you know the mineral? It sounds like an X-Man. Magnesium. Actually, I'm talking about the magnesium breakthrough by Bioptimizers. The 7 different forms of magnesium in this supplement are involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. Pretty much every function in your body gets upgraded when you take magnesium, from the quality of your sleep to your brain function to your metabolism. Stress levels will decrease. And let's face it, even if your 2024 resolution was to oppose this odd globalist regime, it's not going to hurt you to be healthy in order to achieve those goals, because you're going to need quality sleep. You're going to have to be able to manage your stress if you're confronting the globalists. That's a fact, isn't it? So do yourself a favor and make Magnesium Breakthrough part of your daily routine this year so you can get the vitality you need to conquer your dreams and the global elites. Go to bioptimizers.com/brand now and enter the promo code BRAND to get 10% off any order. Again, that's bioptimizers.com/brand. Now, let's get back to bringing them down.
Yeah, how does everyone feel?
Excellent, I think. I think that speaks volumes for how my clients feel about the decision.
Notice that those people aren't spontaneously fainting and having heart attacks.
Dozens of police officers and paramedics challenged Queensland's COVID-19 vaccine mandates.
Oh, those enemies of the state. Whither go they now? All those people who were saying, we should shame them. Paramedics, the very fabric of society. You can find a way of adoring those people, whether you're left or right. Who among us are, oh, do you know I hate paramedics? Going around rescuing people in life and death situations. These are the people that, to some degree, were brave enough to go, I don't think that's right. And the medical professionals as well. What, in my great... No, that doesn't sound right. And now they've been vindicated.
Arguing they should never have been forced to choose between getting the jab and keeping their jobs. Today, they won.
It's, been a long time coming after being stood down without pay for 2 years.
There you go, just sack nurse. Look at how those issues are leveraged, like, support the NHS, which is our health service in this country, support the troops, support the police, or defund them. Like how these people are used as kind of symbols, and like they were just sacking them. In our country, people were going hysterical about nurses and doctors. They were painting rainbows, I'm not even joking. There's rainbows on people's windows. Hey, they were doing dances everywhere. Do you remember that? People were banging pots and pans on their doorsteps. Meanwhile, will you do exactly what you're told? Well, as a medical professional, I've got some concerns about that. You're fired, mate, is what you are. Can I have a drawing of a rainbow? Yeah. In fact, I'm going to use a rainbow pin to tell you where to go. Right off. There you go, there's your fucking rainbow. No pot of gold at the end of it, though.
The Queensland Health in particular ruling could now open a door to lawsuits from other sacked workers in other industries.
Also other territories, maybe people in America and Canada and Ireland and all across Europe. And not so much in Africa, because for some reason, and I think it was money, they didn't mandate vaccines or even provide vaccines in many African nations to the same degree. What an extraordinary coincidence.
That is an argument that might potentially be open to other employees who were dismissed as a result of a vaccine mandate.
34,000 people in New York, all across America. Let me know your personal stories in the comments and chats. I know it happened to you. Oh, well, you wouldn't do it. I didn't do it. I did do it and I regret it. All of that stuff. Let us know. Keep your voice going because you're being vindicated.
Welcome back. Well, Queensland Supreme Court has ruled that the COVID-19 vaccine mandates for emergency services were unlawful.
Now it's time to take your poppers and enjoy some Australian sexy news.
Here to explain is today medical expert Dr. Nick Coatsworth. Doc, good morning to you. This is pretty extraordinary, isn't it? Can you walk us through the ruling?
It is extraordinary, Carl. Before I do that, I can't do this segment without acknowledging my own role in the system that promoted vaccine mandates.
This guy's actually admitting that he made a mistake in endorsing vaccine mandates. He doesn't go so far as to say that vaccines themselves may have been deleterious or have had some negative impact, but perhaps because he hasn't seen the data, because the data's not being released, except to pharmaceutical companies.
What this ruling does is it calls into question the basis upon which those mandates were put in, and it does so because the Queensland Police Commissioner, by law, had to examine the impact on human rights, and it was clear through this case and the evidence, which I read yesterday, that she did no such thing. She didn't give any regard to the human rights implications of these vaccine mandates.
Oh, if only people had brought that up at the beginning of the entire pandemic period. Yeah, they did, didn't they? Everyone was. Isn't this a violation of our human rights? Are you sure that this is not going to cause more harm than it solves? What about the subsidiary and tangential issues that may arise from lockdowns? And what about potential unanticipated side effects caused by these new experimental medications? All legitimate questions, all questions that were asked, all questions that were censored.
And so they were declared unlawful under Section 58 of the Queensland Human Rights Act.
As you know, this caused so much conjecture and angst at the time, right? So what does it actually mean now for those frontline workers who made this complaint?
It could mean a number of things. It could mean that some of them get their jobs back. It could open the way for civil proceedings and damages.
It could mean that people lose trust in all of their systems of government and institutions, and we get a kind of uprising where workers, people that are committed, people that are nurses, firefighters, police officials, even the military start to turn against their own institutions and align with populations of their countries, recognising that we have more in common with one another than the institutions that govern us. But you won't report on that, will you?
Against the governments with Human Rights Acts, which are Queensland, ACT and Victoria. But importantly, I think it opens all the decisions that we, as senior health officials, as senior police and ambulance officials made.
I say this guy's a good guy. He's taking responsibility for it. That's exactly what's required, isn't it? Look, sorry, have you seen anyone else do that? Have you seen Joe Biden do that? Have you seen Anthony Fauci do that? Have you seen anyone in the UK do that? Have you seen anyone in Canada do that? Have you seen anyone go, sorry, even when Justin Trudeau was talking about that emergency act, he's like, I'd do it again.
I am absolutely serene and confident that I made the right choice.
They love their authority, they love their power, they dress it up in an haircut and tell you that it's there to help you.
Did we have regard to Australians' human rights when we made those decisions, and to what extent did we balance those decisions against human rights? And I think going forward, that's probably the most important thing of these decisions, and I think there's going to be more of them.
Well, Victoria needs to keep an eye on this then.
Oh, the guy on the left is just sort of like, wait a minute, I've been reporting on this stuff for years. The whole thing's a total blag. We can't trust them. We started internment camps during that period. What about Don Lemon over on CNN in America there? That's ridiculous. Wait a minute, didn't the British government employ a load of Moderna scientists and British government agents go and work for Moderna immediately after this? Hey!
Well, Victoria certainly does. I mean, there must be cases going on down there. And I think that if we're going to have human rights acts and they're supposed to be protective of people's rights, well, we do have to have regard from them. And
can't just, ignore them as soon as it's inconvenient, like everyone in the world bloody well did.
You know, we have a human rights commissioner, a federal human rights commissioner, who was unfortunately quite silent during the pandemic on some of these issues. And
what have you got to say, human rights commissioner? Do you know that koalas carry chlamydia? Yes, I do. Stop telling me that.
It doesn't matter if the majority of the population goes along with it. Human rights acts are there to protect the minority who may have very good reasons or beliefs.
I don't know if they would have got much airplay when you go back to the circumstances. But
he's realised, he's twigged it. Wait a minute, we were censoring that sort of stuff because we were discussing it here in the office and you told me I couldn't say it.
But you rightly point out, Nick, that you're a government official promoting vaccines during the pandemic. You're a big boy, you can defend yourself. Did you get it wrong?
Australian news, you're a big boy, come on, let's fight.
Yes, I think we did get that wrong. And I think you can say hindsight is 20/20, but Carl, hindsight gives us foresight. And if we have another pandemic, we should think long and hard whether mandates for vaccines are justified.
Yes, indeed. If we have another pandemic, we should think long and hard, and we should certainly demand that all data be released that could help us to establish whether or not there is a link between those medications and excess deaths, which seem to be spiralling across the world, oddly, except in territories where they didn't have access to those medications because they couldn't afford them. The literal irony. Let's get into it. British MPs and peers have accused the Health Secretary of withholding data that could link the COVID vaccine to excess deaths and criticised a wall of silence on the topic. Why would they ever want to keep back data that could establish a link between the vaccines and excess deaths? Let me know in the chat. A cross-party group has written to Victoria Atkins to sound the alarm about the growing public and professional concerns at the UK's rates of excess deaths since 2020. Oh, don't worry about that. What we can do is we can change the way we measure excess deaths until there aren't any, and then everyone can shut up. Ministers have blamed the rise in excess deaths on record NHS, our health service, waiting lists and the pandemic backlog. But the parliamentarians, Congress, are demanding to be shown the underlying data to support the government's assertion that there is no evidence linking excess deaths to the vaccines for COVID-19. Yeah, if there is no link, you'll have no trouble just giving us all the evidence, right? Because the evidence will show that there is no link. And yet you've given it to the pharmaceutical industry, but you're not revealing it in the COVID-19 inquiry, and you've not revealed it yet. Curiously, you are manipulating the figures around excess deaths. What if we recorded it, but we didn't include all these deaths that have been caused by who knows what? If those data do indeed exist, please share them. If thorough investigations have already ruled out such a link, please share the relevant reports, their letter says. There is no place here for blind faith. No, blind faith isn't how science works, although blindness has also shot up, like cancer and heart heart disease, and all sorts of other conditions. The group of 21 MPs and peers from 4 parties have written to the Health Secretary and the Department of Health and Social Care, as well as the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, MHRA, and the UK Health Security Agency, UK HSA, to request the data. And I've been writing to those agencies to request data as well, because it seems they spent a lot of their resources monitoring dissenting voices in this time, and are now spending their resources not revealing data that could establish that there is no link. Let's see that information. It would be great, wouldn't it, to establish no link between excess deaths and COVID-19. When they keep the data, what does it make you think? Oh yeah, no, this data must be so brilliant that we'll all get so whoop-de-doo and excited. That data was about a surprise birthday party for you, for your birthday, and you've spoiled it. You're just like your Pfizer. They believe potentially critical data, which maps the date of people's COVID vaccine doses to the date of their deaths, have been released to the pharmaceutical companies but not put into the public domain. Doesn't that tell you everything you know about how power operates these days? This information has already, they suspect, it's not proven, been given to pharmaceutical companies, but it's not being given to you. How curious that they chose this time to reimagine and manipulate the recording of excess deaths, which took the figure down from 30,000 excess deaths, which is extraordinary. You better believe that would have been on a ticker tape at the height of the pandemic, to 11,000 deaths. Even using their new magical maths, they can't eliminate the fact that an extraordinary number of excess deaths have occurred. And also, they're not releasing this information. What could that be? And also, the COVID-19 inquiry has been suspended until after the election, so we can get another bunch of stooges in who similarly will protect establishment interests instead of looking out for your interests. I suppose the positive thing to point out is there is a cross-party group of MPs that are asking these questions, and those are the kind of politicians, indeed public figures, that we should be supporting, and thank God for them. The MPs argue that the data should be released on the same anonymised basis that it was shared with the pharmaceutical groups, and there seems to be no credible reason why that should not be done immediately. That presumably means that they're saying we can't release this data because of the anonymity. Meanwhile, Tony Blair's globalist group are advocating for the mass sale of data to data companies, private health data. They don't care about your anonymity. They don't care about your safety. They care about protecting big business globalist interests. Am I being cynical? Let me know in the chat. They add, we warn that by withholding official data that could help reassure the public, the DHSC, the UK HSA and the MHRA are now fueling concerns and hesitancy about public health messaging. Questions about these trends, however, have to date been met by a relative wall of silence from your organisations and other public health officials. Remember, at the height of the opioid crisis, remember how they delayed the information. Remember how hard it was to campaign for the release of that data to expose the dangers of fentanyl and other comparable drugs. If they will permit 500,000 people to die in an opioid crisis, do you imagine they've had some radical change of heart and now put your interests above the interests of the pharmaceutical industry? And if you do imagine that, how do you imagine it? Because they won't release the data that objectively demonstrates that there is no connection. Why would that be? Just keep asking that question. Why would they conceal that data? The letter was organised by the All-Party Parliamentary Group, APPG, on Pandemic Response and Recovery, and the campaign group Us For Them. Like, they've had to start a special group within Parliament called Us For Them. It's like, well, hold on, aren't we meant to be representing ordinary people? Yeah. They've had to start a subgroup that does the job that the whole thing's meant to. Remember, that's what it's meant to do. Congress, Parliament, all these institutions, they work for us, and we go, oh yeah, I'm a bit worried about this. Get in there and tell everyone and have a chat about it and sort it out, will you? That's what they're meant to do. They have to remind themselves and start a breakaway like Splinter Group to do what they were supposed to do in the first place. It's like someone at MTV break out and go, well, God, look, we're supposed to be showing pop videos on here. That's what it's meant to do. Its signatories include the Conservative MPs, Miriam Cates, Danny Kruger, Philip Davis and Carl McCartney, as well as the Labour MP, Graham Stringer, who sits on the Science, Innovation and Technology Committee. The leader of Reform UK has committed his party to a public inquiry into excess deaths and alleged COVID vaccine harms. Richard Tice says there was a serious problem with thousands more people dying than expected and suggested the side effects of coronavirus jabs could be responsible. The Office for National Statistics, ONS, has been accused of overestimating excess deaths in the first year of the COVID pandemic. The statistics body announced last week that it was updating its methodology for calculating excess deaths to include current death rates as well as the growing and ageing population, a change that many experts said was long overdue. Oh, you know what this is? This is a long overdue, broad problem, nothing to do with 2019 and 2020. That's why we're just going to keep that data all nice and protected because it's nothing to, these two things are not connected. That's why we've got to protect the data, and by some other coincidence, we're changing the way we measure deaths. All these coincidences coming out of the back of a great big global coincidence where authority benefited, big pharma benefited, the right to censor, authoritarianism benefited. It's all just one big wealth transfer, more authority, more globalization coincidence. So why don't you just shut up? But academics from the University of Oxford warned the new modelling revealed a major drop in expected deaths in 2020, making it appear that far more people had died than normal during the first year of the pandemic. A DHSC spokesman said, "We are committed to data transparency," seems like it, "and publish a wide range of data on excess mortality. The data sets published are kept under constant review and we change them according to what we're told." I added the last bit, but you know, sometimes I'd like to just modulate things to keep it more truthful, bit like the National Office of Statistics. A wide variety of factors can contribute to excess mortality each year, and we work closely with the MHRA and the UK HSA, who won't release their data, to analyse significant trends without looking at their data and adjust public health interventions where appropriate, without looking at the data. All of this can be done by giving the data to Big Pharma, but not giving it to you. So who do they work for, really? Let's do it again slowly, see if we can spot any patterns. They've given the data to Big Pharma, they won't give the data to you. Is there a pattern emerging here? Is there a truth making itself known to us that we cannot trust these institutions? Is there something significant that it takes a breakaway group of politicians to act according to the principles that democracy is actually founded on? That's the foundational principle. A breakaway group of McDonald's restaurateurs are serving hamburgers. Think about it. They're telling you, they're letting you know they can't cope anymore. They're praying for this uprising. They're praying for this awakening. And that's why we're so happy to be participating in it with you. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the chat? Remember, click on the link, join our movement. Things are hotting up. We've got to get ready, guys. Remember, we make additional content every single week, which you will love, and I want to share with you. More important than any of that, if you can in this crazy world, stay free. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.